Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and I've been very curious about living room gaming PCs lately because I'm seeing Microsoft now starting to offer some of their exclusive games not only for the Xbox but also for Microsoft Windows. And we're starting to see more PCs fit this form factor, including this one from Shuttle. This is called the XPC X1, and this is not much larger than an Intel NUC might be, a very small little computer here in a little tiny box, but inside is a quad-core i5 processor and a GTX 1060 GPU from NVIDIA, so it's got decent specs and actually performs pretty well on gaming, but as you'll see in a minute, it costs a little bit more than I would like it to. Now, this is on loan from Shuttle, so we'll be sending this back to them when we're done. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this review, and no one is reviewing this content before it is uploaded. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. This has an i5 7300 HQ processor built in. That is an Intel mobile processor, the same one you might get on a gaming laptop, and I'll talk more about the laptop comparison here in a second. It's got a GTX 1060 GPU with 3 gigabytes of video RAM, 8 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. It has 2 hard drives built in, a 128 gigabyte SSD on an M2 card and a 1 terabyte spinning hard drive. Now, the price on this one is $1,465 or thereabouts on Amazon right now, and that puts this pretty much at the same price you could get, for example, an Alienware 15 laptop with very similar configuration. In fact, I think you can get an i7-based machine for around this price or maybe even less. The i7 version of the Shuttle here will cost about $120 or so more than the $1,465 entry point here. So this is a computer that is very convenient and portable, but if you're looking for portability, you can pay the same amount of money, get the same specifications, and get a monitor and keyboard. So in some ways, in many ways, this one is priced probably a little too high for its specifications, especially considering it has less components. Now, as I often say here on the channel, the smaller something gets, the more you're going to be paying for it, and this one certainly meets that standard. So yes, you can build yourself a PC with similar specifications or better for a lot less money, but it probably won't be as small as this one is. This weighs 3 pounds, 6.8 ounces on its own. That's 1.6 kilograms. When you add in the power adapter here, your total weight, including the power adapter in the computer, is 4 pounds, 12 ounces, or 2.155 kilograms. I do believe this weighs less than that Alienware laptop I mentioned earlier. So if you're looking for something very portable to take with you to events or something, this certainly meets that goal, but you will be paying a high price tag for it. Let's take a look at all the ports now, and then I'll talk a little bit about upgradability on this one. Your power button is here. You've got a full-size SD card slot over here, along with 2 USB 3.0 slots. These have a little lightning bolt there next to them because when the computer is off, it will also charge your phone and tablet. So you've got that functionality. There's a Kensington lock here to prevent people from walking away with your very portable gaming computer here. Analog headphone jack output right here. I guess you could plug some speakers in there too if you wanted to. 2 more USB 3.0 slots. Gigabit Ethernet. Now, you do have an HDMI port here, but this is not the one you want to plug into. You want to connect your displays up to the lower ones here because these are the ones connected to the GPU. This one is for the Intel graphics, and at least on my computer here, this port was disabled. So if you buy this and don't get anything on screen, plug it into the bottom port and you'll be good to go. I was hoping this would be a Thunderbolt port because that would give you some more expandability, for example, but unfortunately it is just a USB port here. This is a USB Type-C port, but it just does USB 3.0 speed. So you're going to get pretty much the same data performance out of this port as you will out of these 2 ports here. So that was a big disappointment, especially for the price, that you're not getting a Thunderbolt port that would give you some additional graphics options. Down here, you've got 4 USB 2.0 ports, good for plugging in your keyboards and mouses and whatnot. Down here are the outputs for HDMI, and you also have a full-size display port there also. Now, this will not be as upgradable as a traditional desktop PC might be, so you cannot swap out the CPU on this one. So the CPU you buy will be the one you live with for the duration of your ownership. That's because this is a mobile processor. Also, the GPU is on its own daughter card. It's proprietary to this design, so you will not be able to swap out the GPU either. So the 1060 and the i5 or the i7 are kind of locked in here, and that is it. You can, though, get at the M2 SATA drive that's inside, along with the traditional spinning SATA drive that's on this one, and you can also upgrade the RAM, but you do have to go through a lot of layers to get there. We took it apart on the extras channel. We were kind of digging through some things, had a lot of screws that we had to unscrew to get at those components, but you can swap them out once you get everything taken apart. And just know that when you do take that SATA hard drive out of here, it's going to pull the antennas out of the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi card that's inside of this. So you have to be sure to reconnect those antennas before you put everything back together. So it wasn't the friendliest machine to upgrade, although it wasn't all that difficult either. But again, you're not going to have the same kind of flexibility you will have on a traditional desktop PC that allows you to swap out more components like the CPU and GPU. Now, this is a gaming computer, so of course we're going to run some games on it. We're going to start off with the new version of Doom. With the settings that you see on screen here, we were getting frame rates at around 90 to 120 frames per second out of that 1060 GPU, so it ran that game very, very nicely. I should add these were all running at 1080p. We also ran Rocket League. We're seeing very nice frame rates of around 100 to 160 frames per second. GTA 5, with the settings that you see on screen, was getting around 60 to 75 frames per second. That game always varies quite a bit and is also very CPU intensive. So these are areas where if you swapped in that i7 processor instead of the i5 when you first configure the computer, you might do a little better with that processor bump, which doesn't really cost all that much more considering what you're spending going into it. We also ran The Witcher 3, and you can see the settings that we have for that game. We went with the GeForce recommended settings on that. We were seeing frame rates around 55 to 60 frames per second, so you might want to tweak those down a little bit to improve the frame rate if you've got a high frequency monitor. Dota 2 ran very nicely, 138 to 150 frames per second with the settings that you can see right there, so nothing too crazy on that one. That one we'd expect to do pretty well. Minecraft, of course, because we can't have a review on this channel without Minecraft, ran at a blazingly fast speed, 720 to 950 frames per second, so certainly you shouldn't have any problems playing Minecraft on here, but we can, of course, play it on a $200 PC as well. And on the 3D Mark Time Spy test, we got a score of 3,456, and that puts this thing about where I would expect a 1060 GPU to perform. Now, last year we built an i3-based machine with a GTX 1060 GPU from PNY inside of it. That GPU on that computer was slightly overclocked, and if you look at the score here, it does do slightly better on those first two graphics tests, but I think the 1060 inside the Shuttle here is probably running at a more stock configuration, and I think that performance is what I would expect out of something like that. So it seems to perform about where it should, and you can see, of course, that the i5 in here performs better than the i3 that we were running on that custom build from a year ago. Also take a look at the Lenovo Y710 Cube, which has a GTX 1070. That'll give you an idea of what kind of graphics boost you might see out of a 1070 based machine versus the 1060 in this one. Now, I did also run the Steam VR test, which measures how well this thing can keep up in a VR environment, and it's able to. It does meet the standard of being VR ready, but Steam is now recommending a graphics card upgrade on this particular machine to really match the GPU requirements for VR in the future. So right now, at the end of 2017, it's probably fine for virtual reality, but as things continue to develop, it may not be enough for some of the stuff that's coming down the line. So if you're looking to get into VR, this will be fine for now, but it may not be fine later, and you have no way of upgrading the graphics processor on here. So if you are looking to do that, you might want to look at a more traditional desktop PC that has an expandable GPU. So let's move on to thermal performance, because when you pack a lot of components into a tight little space like this, you get a lot of heat. And what they've done, and you'll see this on the teardown that I did, is put the graphics card and the CPU into two different compartments, and they're relatively isolated from each other. So they have their own fans and heat sinks, and there's a wall up between them. So I'm sure some heat transfers between the two sides of the wall here, but it's doing a pretty good job of getting that heat out of the computer. So it stays pretty cool to the touch. You will feel a lot of hot air coming out of the side on it. And we also ran the 3D Mark stress test, which runs a pretty high-end benchmark benchmark over and over again for a good stretch of time and measures how much throttling happens as a result of the heat buildup, because these chips will slow down the hotter they get to prevent them from overheating. And we got a score of 96.9% on that test. 97% is a passing grade on that test, so it is running a little lower than a passing score, but I don't think you'll get a huge amount of noticeable slowdown in the games that you're playing with it, but just know it's not scoring perfectly on that like you might get on a desktop computer, for example. At the end of that test, we measured a CPU temperature of 52 degrees Celsius or 125 degrees Fahrenheit, and the GPU was running at 76 degrees Celsius and 168 degrees Fahrenheit. And we also found that the fans on this are not all that loud. They're certainly a lot quieter than the Alienware 15 is, so that was a good thing to not get a huge wind tunnel going with this thing, and it seemed to do pretty nicely there. One last thing to talk about, and that is home theater performance, because this is a really nice and compact PC that can not only run games, but can also play back your movies and whatnot. We do cover a lot of home theater stuff here on the channel, so of course we installed Kodi on it, and I was able to load up some of my movies and watch them upscaled to 4K on my 4K TV. It also supports all of the lossless digital formats like DTS HD and Dolby True HD. For the price, it better do it, and it does, so that was a good thing. It also was able to play back some of those high-end HEVC files that we like to test, including the one you see right here, which runs at 4K at 140 megabits per second at 10-bit. So all the boxes that you need to check on home theater performance will be met here, and I would hope it would for the price point there, and thankfully it did not disappoint on that front. So what's the final verdict on the XPC X1? I really like the form factor here, and I don't like the price. In fact, just recently I bought a 15-inch Alienware with a 1070 GPU for not much more than what this costs, because I wanted something portable that I could plug into various TVs around the house, and this certainly is smaller than that device is, but it should cost less given that we don't have a keyboard, trackpad, or screen to worry about here. And the fact that this really is not any less expensive than a comparably equipped gaming laptop is giving me pause in recommending it. If this costs less, I think this would be a great living room gaming PC or something that you could bring around to LAN parties and whatnot, but you're not going to see performance out of here any better than a gaming laptop, given that it has laptop components inside of it and you're paying the same money for it. So unless the fan noise of those laptops really bugs you, I think there really isn't much of a reason to go with this over something like an Alienware device or a similar computer from another manufacturer. So that's going to do it on this one. If they can get the price down on it, I would certainly recommend it, because I do like the form factor. It is a well-engineered piece of equipment here, but at the moment I think it's priced just too high for what it is, and it really needs a Thunderbolt port too. This is Lon.TV, thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, including gold level supporters, the Black Eyed and Blues Music Hour podcast, Chris Allegretta, John Prawl, William Miller, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.